This is Conversation Balloons, a podcast of interviews with experts and friends about all things generational. I'm your host, Leah Farish. Today, I'm introducing to you Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. He's a retired U.S. Army Ranger, former professor of psychology at West Point. He was inducted into the U.S. Marshall Hall of Fame. He's testified before Congress and numerous state legislatures and courts as an expert in police and military force. He's the author of half a dozen books, including bestsellers on killing and on combat, for example. And On Combat was translated into Ukrainian and just won last week the Book of the Year award there. Also, he's published in the Harvard Journal of Law and Civil Policy and elsewhere. He's a leading trainer about school safety, terrorist threat, and mass murder. And thank you. We're honored to have you, Colonel Grossman.
Thank you, Leah, and your wonderful audience. I'm so pleased to be here, and I love the way you kind of take things in a different direction. Let's give your audience some good information to kind of help them view the world maybe a little bit differently.
Thank you. That will be great. I want to give my audience a bit of a warning. There may be some disturbing material here. We're going to be talking about juvenile violence, and I don't want Colonel Grossman to hold back. I think part of the blinders that older people have had that we're wearing about this is that we are assuming we know what a video game looks like, and we are. I've had my eyes open studying your book and specifically Assassination Generation, and so be aware if you have kids listening that it might be unsettling, and maybe they might not be ready to hear. But I think most of us need to face these facts. Also, I want to make a distinction that's been important to me. I'm an attorney. I've engaged in litigation against the police, always successfully. I'm very careful about what cases I will take. But I've taught police civil liability. I've interviewed police departments in 25 cities about hate crimes. I've taught civil rights, criminal procedure, and things like that. And I find a useful distinction to make between force and violence. Force, by that word, I mean, when I teach, the decisive exercise of strength. Violence is the use of force without authority to do so.
Oh, that's good.
And so I will tend to make that distinction today, but you're the expert, so we'll go with whatever you're thinking. But you might say that, in my view, force is used by sheepdogs, violence is used by wolves.
And there are times, Leah, when the sheepdog becomes a wolf, and they need to be dealt with, and everybody would thank you for.
Yeah.
One of the things I tell every law enforcement class, I just had a class day before yesterday. Almost every sheriff in California was there. And I told them we've got to police our own. We've got to create an environment in which we get rid of the ones who've demonstrated that they're not made for this job. The price of failure is too high. And it's people like you who are holding us accountable and are part of that process. It is what makes our nation healthy. So we can definitely find some good middle ground there.
Well, I'm sure of it. And I want you to talk to my audience, because we deal with generational subjects, about your book, Assassination Generation, which came out in 2016. And so you're working on writing it a little bit before that. Could you update us on what you've seen since the book came out? And because we have a new age cohort, we have very new circumstances since COVID locked us down for a while, and we have new media.
Well, Leah, I think one of the major changes is we're getting ever deeper into ever more horrendous violence. There's so many aspects of this. One of the things we talk about is the fame aspect. And recent research on that, the Oxford, Michigan school massacre, the kid in Michigan who gunned down his fellow students, one of the last entries in his journal was, I always put it up my class in his scrawled writing, I want the world to remember me. I said, what's his kid's motivation? What's his motivation? The California or the Florida school massacre in Forest Park, Florida. Again, this kid said online, he said, yeah, "You can know who I am. I'm going to be famous." And I said, "What's this guy's motivation? You know, it's fame. This is one piece of the puzzle." Something fairly recently that happened that I'm holding up as a positive model in so many ways. New Zealand, a little while back, just before the pandemic, had a mass murder in a mosque, actually two different mosques. And this guy live streamed his massacre in two different mosques. And the video looks just like a first person video game. This killer said that he trained on video games. We've got the killer on that island in Norway that committed that horrible crime on that youth
Mm-hmm.
camp. It's an all-time record solo gun massacre.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, he said that he trained on video games to commit this crime. But the Prime Minister of New Zealand said something really important. She said, this man did what he did for notoriety, for fame. And she said, New Zealand will not give it to him. She said, New Zealand will never say this man's name. New Zealand will never show this man's face. New Zealand will not even give him his name. Boom. Somebody gets it. That's punishment. This turning these killers into celebrities, showing their face, saying the name over and over again, this is part of the crime.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we talk about a generational shift, I was a West Point psych professor, my last year there, assistant professor of psychology. And we taught a section on this. In the 1970s, we had what they call cluster suicides. Very interesting. If the local media reported on a juvenile suicide, there would be more suicides. And we learned that we must not do a memorial service for a for a suicide victim in the school, or there'll be more
Yeah.
suicides. In the 1970s, we learned without a doubt, children will kill themselves to get in the news. Children will kill themselves to get a memorial service. I know how to make everybody sorry. I know how to get attention. I know how to make them talk about me. All I got to do is take my life and boom. And so the media did one of the most cowardly things they've ever done. They all got together. They said, okay, we're not going to report juvenile suicides anymore, but we won't say that we're not doing it. And we won't admit that we're doing any harm. Now, what kind of journalism is that? Where they refuse to report on themselves and the entire community. So, but we know children will commit suicide to get in the news, without a doubt. And for every suicide, you have many more suicides. And for every one that you do a school assembly for, you get many
Mm-hmm.
more. And we know these killers will commit these terrible crimes to get in the news, to get their 15 minutes of fame. And it goes even deeper. Like you said, there's some hard things here. Uh, we are at the point where they've got to create ever more horrendous crimes. We've seen three elementary school massacres. And what's left to shock us? Well, what's coming next, I pray that I'm wrong, is daycare massacres and nursery massacres. Belgium had a daycare massacre. Fascinating. They call it the Joker killing. This daycare in Belgium, this guy on the first anniversary of the death of the actor who played the Joker, with orange hair and a butcher knife, quoting a line from the movie, goes in this daycare and murders one daycare worker, wounds another, and hacks and stabs over a dozen
Oh.
babies in the crib. Uh, just last year, we had an axe massacre. 4 children murdered with an axe in Brazil. China has had repeated daycare massacres. I tell people, do an online search, Chinese daycare attack, and look at all of the answers that come up. Just do a quick search over and over and over again. I pray that I'm wrong, but what's left to stun us? What's left to get in the news? When this evil crime happens, whatever weapon they use, don't blame it on the weapon. If the guy in Brazil had an axe. The guy in Belgium had a butcher knife. The ones in China, we had one with an axe. We had bunches with knives. Don't blame it on what's in their hand. Blame it on what's in their heart and their head. And ask yourself. I had these all the sheriffs and all the other people just in California. We said, think like a detective. Think like a scientist. What is the new factor? So when we look at this new generation, the video games become ever more immersive and ever more addictive. We also get the interactive video games where you hack and slash. Now, in the past, we had the shooter games, but now you actually immerse yourself in the 3D environment with a sword or a knife and you hack and slash. And what we're doing is we're rehearsing knife massacres and sword massacres and axe massacres. They're actually rehearsing not just the idea, but the physical activity as we get in these total immersion dynamics. But there's another angle on this whole equation, another pathology that weaves in, and that is the sleep deprivation. This epidemic of sleep deprivation. Do an online search for sleep deprivation and suicide. Boom, it explodes. One of the things we're seeing is worldwide that we're seeing juvenile suicides explode and teenagers, 10, 11, 12-year-old teenage girl suicide rate tripled per capita. And that was pre-pandemic. We know since the pandemic, there's been a terrible increase in juvenile suicides. But folks, do an online search for suicide and sleep deprivation. Taking your own life is not a natural act. You have to have profoundly impaired judgment. That every living organism will fight desperately to preserve their life. So alcohol and suicide have always been related. Alcohol creates impaired judgment. You make a bad decision, never get a chance to rethink it. But the most pervasive form of impaired judgment is sleep deprivation. 24 hours without sleep, and you are the equivalent of blowing 0.10 above legally drunk blood alcohol level.
Wow.
It impairs your judgment. It makes you stupid. So one of the best studies on a meta study, a study of studies on suicide, said not only is sleep deprivation a key factor in suicide, it's the most remediable factor.
Sure.
Now, we can't do much about your relationships right now. We can't do much about your finances right now, but we can get you a good night's sleep right now. Now, don't take it out of context. It's more complex, but there's kind of the old cliche, take 2 aspirin, call me in the morning. Well, the new cliche could be, it's more complex, but take an Ambien and call me in the morning. Get a good night's sleep, and then let's see how everything looks. This is so tragic, this explosion. What I tell people is, here's parenting 101 for the 21st century. When you send your kid to bed at night, take their cell phone away from them.
Yeah.
No laptop in the room, no cell phone in the room. They have got to go to the room and sleep. So a cop came up to me during one of my presentations. He said, I had one of those teenagers. He said, she was a good girl. She was an A student. She said, Dad, it's embarrassing. You don't have to take my cell phone every night. You can trust me. I said, okay, I trust you. Keep your cell phone. He said, a little while later, she took her life. He said, my little girl took her life. And we never knew the hell she was living in until we looked at the text messages on her cell phone. Night after night of ceaseless, relentless, vicious bullying. And you can't just ignore that. We're not wired that way. He said it was heartrending to see her all night long, night after night, trying to defend herself, trying to find somebody to stand up for her. He said, I understood immediately. My little girl was bullied to death. What I didn't understand until now, she was sleep deprived, tormented, and bullied to death in front of my eyes, and I let it happen. He said, I
Oh, go
read
ahead.
that text in the middle of the night. How can we expect our kids to?
Oh, no.
So yeah, I just last week I had the honor to train 800 law enforcement investigators in the state of Texas. These are Department of Family Services investigators, and they investigate every child death in the state of Texas, 800 of them. And I asked them, please start looking at the sleep deprivation. They study every teen suicide, and they look at their phone log, they look at their email, they look at their web log. And I said, please start looking for this. And several of them came up and said, we see it. It's there. It's always there. These suicides, These kids spin out all their 24 hours, day after day. You can watch them spin out online. You can watch it on the cell phones. We see it every day. One of the things I had a detective in Illinois come to me in tears just about 2 years ago. She said, I have had 6 cases. Now, she kind of oversees juvenile death cases in the southern half of the state of Illinois. She said, just the last couple of months, I've had 6 cases where the boyfriend or the father or the babysitter murders the baby because the baby interrupts their video game.
Yep.
He said, in one case, the boyfriend said, oh, I dropped the baby. And the girlfriend believed him. She wanted to believe him. But the coroner peeled the little scalp back,
Mm.
and perfectly imprinted into the skull was the impression of a video game
Oh,
controller,
God.
where the guy slammed a video game controller into the kid's skull and murdered him with a video game controller. Most cases, she said, they just smother him. They bury him in blankets because the crying is bothering their video games. So we've got this sleep deprivation. We've got these incredibly addictive devices being inflicted upon children. The pathological behavior that comes with sleep deprivation is just one more part of the equation.
I did an interview with a nurse in juvenile detention, and she had been in that job for 15 to 20 years, and she's seen a change. She's seen several changes, including that the offenders are getting younger. The murderers and
Yeah.
rapists, carjackers are getting younger. But also, she said the first 2 or 3 days that they come in, they sleep. They're
Yeah.
extremely sleep deprived, and
Yeah.
they're just wound up, and they're full of adrenaline, and they do the video games and whatever else that keeps them awake, and they're just in fight or flight mode, and they can't
Yes.
sleep, and somehow when
Yes.
they know they get here, they're able to just rest for a few days.
See, that's part of and that's part of the opiate epidemic. That's another dynamic with the sleep deprivation. Fentanyl's an opiate, and we have 70,000 or more deaths a year from fentanyl. We lost 50,000 people in all of Vietnam. We lose 70,000 from fentanyl every year. And if not for Narcan, that number would be much higher. Everybody today carries the Narcan, which is the opiate antidote. When somebody's on the edge of death, boom, we bring them right back. If not for Narcan, the number would be much, much higher. But this opiate epidemic and prescription opiates have always been there. Why are opiates a drug of choice? Well, sleep deprivation creates chronic pain. You don't sleep, the tendons and muscles are going to ache, and you seek. But also, the body craves rest, and a sleep deprived person is especially susceptible to opiates,
Hmm.
and so the body is craving rest. The thing to realize is sleep is a biological blind spot. Our bodies are pretty good at getting air, food, or water. Try going out that air, food, water well, your body will take over.
Hmm.
But our bodies are not good at getting enough sleep because it always happened naturally. It got dark every night without fail. There was nothing to do. A little sex, a little talking, roll over, and went to sleep. Then we invented the electric light bulb and the television and the video game, ever more immersive things to steal our sleep. The head of Netflix said that their competitor is sleep. The corporate policy of Netflix is to steal your sleep. Now, sleep deprivation is a key factor in suicide. It's a key factor in traffic deaths. Worldwide traffic deaths have exploded. Number one, number two killer of our kids worldwide is suicide and traffic death. And then it's a key factor in opiate epidemic. A book I recommend to all of my classes is a book called Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew
Uh-huh.
Walker. And he talks about a lot of this. And he's got an online site where he puts the latest research. It's good. But one of the things Dr. Walker talks about also is the irrefutable link between sleep deprivation and Alzheimer's. So I tell my cops, I say, "Oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Well, you have a decade of Alzheimer's first, you idiot." So
Yeah.
sleep deprivation is a key factor in obesity and heart disease. So here's this world global explosion of obesity and heart disease and Alzheimer's. This global explosion of teen suicides and traffic deaths and opiate epidemic. And what is the common denominator? What is the new factor? So we talked about the fame, and then we talked about the sleep deprivation. That's just one other pathology that weaves into that. And that nurse practitioner talking to you, I've heard this story so many times. We take them away from this stuff, and they're detoxing for the first 48 hours. They're miserable, and the fight or flight hormones are flushing out of their body, and then they get sleep, and suddenly they're a different person.
Yeah.
Uh, Faith-based camps, church camps nationwide tell me, ain't nothing spiritual happened in this camp for the first 2 days. On the third day, it's like somebody threw a
Huh.
switch.
Yeah.
So this is pathology that is everywhere. The sleep deprivation, the addictive, binge watching TV shows, the video games. Every generation is ever more addictive and ever more immersive.
Mhm.
Social media is being sued right now. They've got patents. I understand this. They have received patents for making social media more addictive.
Well,
And I asked my audience, I said, yeah, you ever played a video game? You ever get on social media? And all of a sudden, it's 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. Got no idea where the last 8 hours went, and it's time to get dressed and go to work. Well, there's a lot of. I said they do that on purpose. That's their goal. Your time is their money. They don't care that they're killing you. They don't care that they're stealing your sleep. They just want your time. And watching that show is their money, and playing that game is their money. And the fact that they're using you up and throwing you away isn't even on their radar screen.
well, I would like for you to describe a little bit for our uninitiated listeners what these first person shooter games are actually showing. They're
All right.
they're so disturbing. The first thing I noticed on the in Assassination Generation, you narrate one of the typical games, and it involves urinating on the body parts of the person that you just blew up. There it's so barbaric that I really think people need to be aware,
Yeah.
not just to
Yeah.
be uh, morbid about it, but what are they training kids to do, and how are they training them to think?
Well, the game we opened up the book Assassination Generation with was Postal, and about going postal and committing all these evil acts. And it's kind of a cartoonish game, but the all-time record best-selling video game as of a few years ago, I think it still is, a game called Grand Theft Auto 5. And the year Grand Theft Auto 5 came out, it made more money than the entire global music industry. Wrap your mind around that. One video game made more money than every rock concert on the planet, every musician, every CD, every download on the planet. And it was this cop killing criminal simulator. And one of the things you do in the game is you get sex with a prostitute. And it shows her head bobbing up and down as she gives you oral sex. And then you gasp an orgasm, and your character score goes up. And then you murder the woman just had sex with, and you get your money back. This is the all-time record best-selling video game in history. And this is one of the plot lines that you can use, and you're actually rewarded for it, and you experiment. So we talk about sex crimes at ever younger ages. So much of that is pornography that's inflicted upon them now, and we spun out to a level of sexual activity at young ages. It's almost difficult to understand. It's dysfunctional. It's pathological. But when you combine the sex with violence, then it is beyond dysfunctional. It is destructive to our entire civilization, and that's a path we're spinning down.
And it doesn't just portray killing adults, it does portray killing children, torturing all kinds of
Yeah,
people, animals, in every
yeah,
kind of situation. Um, I know that you're an expert in training the military. We do want our military and police force to
yeah.
be lethal when necessary. It's actually safer that way if everyone understands their superior power in a given situation. But
Yes.
how does simulation in training the military or police, even using target practice and video
Right, right.
simulations, differ? Why is
Yeah,
that not pernicious and pathological rather
yeah.
than these video games?
I talk about it in my book on killing, which is translated 8 languages now, 500,000 copies sold in English, and You go to Google Scholar, scholar.google.com, look up any published work and see how many times it's been cited in other works. And On Killing has been cited over 3,700 times in scholarly works. It's really one of the great contributions of our society. And we talk about the fact that in World War II, we found out that most of our soldiers would not pull the trigger. Now, if there's a leader there, things change. If there's groups there, things change. But the individual riflemen left their own devices, only 15 to 20% will pull the trigger. And it was a training flaw. We taught our troops to shoot bullseye targets. I tell folks we have no known cases, any bullseyes ever attacking our troops. If you've been in the U.S. Armed Forces since the Korean War, you never once shot a bullseye. Anybody who's been in the military knows a man-shaped silhouette pops you in field of view. You hit the target, target drops, stimulus response, stimulus response. It was intentionally, systematically taken from B.F. Skinner. In West Point, we taught a segment on Skinner and B.F. Skinner and the Skinner box, and we used military marksmanship training as an almost perfect example of Skinner, operant conditioning, reward schedule, and everything. It's all there. And we do this to adults under authority. And it makes them able to do what they need to do in combat under authority, under great limitations. In the military, you point your weapon in the wrong direction, fire at the wrong time, fire in the wrong direction, and a midst of bad stuff comes down upon you. The discipline to adults, and if that disturbs us a little bit, then understand the video games are doing exactly the same thing to our children. On Killing came out in 1995. We put out a second edition a few years later, but this book's been out now for almost 30 years. And when the book first came out, I said a generation of juvenile killers are being raised like nothing we've ever seen before. Now, there's always somebody that says, well, I played those games, I'm not a killer. I said, well, when I was a kid, I never buckled my seatbelt. I'm just fine. Nobody buckled. I don't know a single kid who died because his seatbelt was unbuckled. But I'm a cop, and all you got to do is scrape a few kids off the highway, and you become a believer in seatbelt lies. Not every kid with their belt unbuckled died, but most of the ones that died had their seatbelt unbuckled.
Mm.
Not every kid playing these games becomes a killer, but all the killers play these games. And the other thing to understand about these games is they are teaching bullying behavior. In healthy play, whenever somebody is hurt, the play stops, right? We all gather around the hurt kid and try to convince him not to tell mom. We've all been there. In a football game or a basketball game, one of the players gets hurt, the fans go silent, the play stops. Whenever somebody gets hurt, the play stops. In the video game, remember, it's called a game. In this game, you blow your playmates' heads off and explosions of blood. They writhe. It was realistic depictions of blood and suffering. They beg for mercy. Does a play stop? You get points. This is pathological play. This is dysfunctional play. I tell people, can you not tell the difference between healthy play, somebody gets hurt, the play stops, and the video game where you're systematically conditioned and rewarded for inflicting suffering on others?
Well, and now we're getting people too who maybe they wouldn't inflict those kinds of injuries, but they'll record it and they'll post it
Yes.
online. They'll stand there watching it and
Yes.
not intervene.
Well, one of the things that's happened is the violence in our schools has exploded. I got a chart that I show my audiences, and it's just been a steady uptick in federal data on violent a loss of life and attacks in our schools. And to whatever degree the violence has gone up, the bullying has also gone up. I'll tell people, do you remember, all of us remember that kid who sincerely took pleasure in making you suffer? That was that bully who was so dysfunctional that they learned to take pleasure in making you suffer. Well, there's many, many more of those kids out there today, turning our kids' lives into living hell. The bullies have bullies. It's so systematic and baked into the program now.
Well,
And it comes back to the games teaching you to take pleasure in inflicting suffering.
yeah, and by the way, I don't care how realistic these games are, they have not caused the gamers the consumers of these things to feel pain. Uh, they,
And that's a great
you
point.
know, they're doing all these things with utter impunity, and that trains them as well, and they forget what pain feels like, and they're actually it's it's a training to become a coward, which is not military or police training.
Oh, that's well said. That's funny. One of the quotes that I put up is it was the El Paso Walmart massacre. This guy said, "It's not cowardly to pick low-hanging fruit." Yes, it is. It is.
Oh,
He said, in order to, and the killer said his manifesto to fulfill your Call of Duty super soldier fantasy. He said he's taken his Call of Duty super soldier fantasy, turning it into reality. But when we talk about
kill
these bullies
Walmart
and things,
shoppers is a call of
oh
duty.
yeah,
What that is
uh,
so
uh,
there's that's just what is it? Delusions of grandeur.
yeah, that is. And again, it's about fame. And the media is not talking about it. So here's something that your listeners think are enormously important. We show the brain scan data in our book Assassination Generation. Here's your kid's brain. Here's your kid's brain on video games. And when they're immersed in these games, fight or flight hormones are flooding through their body. And when you're in actively fighting for your life, predictive left brain processing is shut down. Where your meal comes from tomorrow is not on your radar screen when you're in fight or flight mode. And so, based on that research and other good stuff, in 2005, the state of California overwhelmingly voted to regulate children's access to these violent video games. 2005, California legislature overwhelming. Hollywood said, yeah, we're good with that. Silicon Valley said, yeah, we're good with that. Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor. Arnold signed the law. And the video game industry fought that law all the way to the Supreme Court. They said we have a constitutional First Amendment right to sell any game to any kid at any age. You cannot stop us. You cannot regulate us. And they conned seven Supreme Court judges, seven old men that probably never played Pong in their life, overturned the law. But look at the dissenting opinions and understand what's going on here. This industry has fought all the way to the Supreme Court to sell any game to any kid at any age.
Yeah, one thing I really appreciated so much about Assassination Generation was that you showed there are harms to kids who play these games aside from them morphing into a mass murderer. The consumer may not ever do that, and the statistics are clear that they don't, but they tend to become more fearful. They've come to believe that the world is a vicious dog eat dog place. They become depressed, callous to
Yeah.
suffering, less respectful of authority, less respectful of women, more likely to harm women, children, animals. They have less retention and cognitive control. You talk about that on pages 172 and 3. More likely to
Yeah.
kill themselves, which you mentioned. They have less pro social behavior.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the boys with video game consoles early on, they have to have consoles, had significantly lower reading and math scores within 4 months after getting them compared
Yeah.
to boys without consoles, and more learning problems as reported by their teachers. So these are quality of life impairments that are very broad. You know,
Yeah.
Thomas Hobbes said, the life without authority and government operating is solitary, nasty, brutal, and short. And
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
view of the world, and that's what life is going
Yeah.
to have other ramifications aside from just going out and killing a number of people. And we see that. We have by all kinds of metrics shown that kids are getting less empathetic. They're more
And
callous.
one of the important things I recommend all my audience is screenstrong.com. Screenstrong.com. They're doing a great job of families detoxing and information. They've got a great online education program. But another program that was in upstate Michigan, in an entire school district detox their kids for 10 days. So you show the causal dynamic. Well, we can show the reverse. When an entire school district detoxed for 10 days, shut off TV, movie, and video games for 10 days, K through 12 curriculum, it's brilliant. The curriculum's still available online right now. And this brilliant K through 12 curriculum, they detox for 10 days. And in controlled double blind observation of playground and cafeteria behavior, they cut violence in half, they cut bullying in half, and raised test scores double digits. So we detoxed these kids for 10 days, and we cut violence in half, we cut bullying in half, and raised test scores double digits. I mean, why is not everybody just foaming at the mouth and lining up to partake of this?
Mm-hmm.
And the ones who are kind of currently carrying the banner on that is this screenstrong.com with this family detox. But the idea of an entire school district doing it, the way they did it was brilliant. And we've got such good data coming on. That, again, is in the book, Assassination Generation. We show the cause, we show the reverse. One of the things that we'll see or hear all the time is that, my kid, my grandkid, he's surly, he's sullen, his grades are bad. We take the games away and boom, he improves.
Mm-hmm.
We get the game back, boom, he nosedives. Take it away, boom, he improves. A couple of rides on that roller coaster, very often here, keep those games away from me. I don't like who I am when I play those games.
Yeah.
Now, if they were never detoxed, if they never had a chance to see that there was another life out there,
Mm-hmm.
they'd never know that. I think that's the most powerful words anybody could say. I don't like who I am when I played those games. But they'll never know that
Yeah.
if you don't detox.
You talk page 197 about 10% of youth suffer from pathological video game use, and 50% of multiplayer role-playing gamers said they considered themselves addicted. That
Yeah.
70% of them would play 10 hours at one sitting, and whatever you're doing for 10 hours, that's molding your brain right there for sure.
They wear diapers because they can't make a bathroom stop in the intensity of the game. These gamers are wearing diapers, sitting, so, we're talking about regressing to 2-year-olds and losing bowel and bladder control. It's not that they're losing it, it's that they,
They don't
they,
want
they,
to stop.
they can't leave the game. They're wearing
And they
diapers while
don't
they
eat.
play the
Yeah.
game.
Well, and
Yeah.
also just a note about multiplayer games. Those have a danger of predators operating in that sphere, right? That's an additional problem.
How terrible pathology. There's programs online where kids get online and they get points and they can actually get money online, and people vote for them and people support them. And these predators get these young children. I'm talking, I'm talking 4 years old, 5, 6, 7-year-old girls, and they talk them into ever more nakedness and exposure and self gratification online. And these girls are actually making money and actually being rewarded for these behaviors. And I'm talking on a vast scale. Online search for webcam girls or jailbait webcam girls, and look at the dynamics. We've got hundreds of thousands of predators who are on these online, who are preying upon these girls. And we got a 5-year-old girl, a 6-year-old girl that barely understand what's happening, and they're talking to her and encouraging her to take her clothes off, and she gets points and she gets rewarded and got no idea what's going on. And there's this vast array of perverts who will vote for her and reinforce her behavior when she does these things. One of the greatest pathologies in recent time is heartrending to see these little girls that are just being conned into this behavior by this army of perverts online. And you see the kid, you can see the girl is home alone, or she's in her bedroom alone with a laptop. What is a kid at that age doing? And in her bedroom alone with a laptop online,
Well, the
and
parents are in their bedroom alone with their laptop, and they're checked out. They're on their devices, and that's something great about that Michigan detox and the challenge from Screen Strong, we all got to do it.
Yes.
That's hard to
Well,
do. That's hard to do.
yeah.
Let me ask you something. I kind of developed a theory that mass murders were usually a suicide ritual. But then we had the Uvalde murderer and the Sandy Hook, who both made arrangements to run and hide, and they evaded police for a while and
Yeah.
showed that they were not trying to be the star of the show the way the Columbine guys were. And so I wonder if that has changed.
Well, there is a dynamic. If they're trapped and there is no way out, then suicide becomes the way out. And suicide is very woven into a lot of the games
Oh,
as a way out. You've always got the suicide option, and then you restart the game. It's almost conditioned in. It's the end of the line, and here's these dead bodies around him, and the cops are closing in, and they take their life. And again, they've been almost trained to do that. It's part of the program of the dynamic. But if there is a way out, and many of them plan for that, when we look at these murders committed online, or if you do the video game, let's say you're in the video game, you commit this massacre. They very seldom intentionally trap themselves. They have a plan to get out of there. These are murder simulators. These are criminal simulators, and they very often involve a plan to get out of there. If you're trapped and you can't get out of there, then they know what the answer is. But if there's a way to get out, these are simulators, and what's being trained in the simulator is killing and pathological behavior, suicide if there is no way out. But it is a simulator, a criminal simulator that includes an escape plan, very often built into it.
mm-hmm.
So when we look at the broader spectrum of what these ever more immersive games are, in Grand Theft Auto 5, for example, this you play this game for hundreds of hours and never repeat yourself. And you don't just kill yourself all the time. You want to continue to play this game. You've got an escape mode, and you've got a plan to get out of there. You hijack a car, and you kill the person in the car, and then you hijack that car, and then you crash and hijack another car. You got an escape plan that's built in and being taught as part of the and a pretty good insight into the dynamic.
Yeah, that Boston Marathon thing made me made me feel that whole thing was like a video game scenario for them. I want to share a couple of personal experiences I had. Raising a son who played football and things. I thought maybe the video games he was just starting to play, and which were very innocent back in comparatively very innocent back in the before the 2000s. I thought, well, it'd be cathartic, but that that is not true. That has not been borne out. It actually stimulates
Yeah.
aggression, and also I just didn't realize. I had a young relative who got invited to play anime at some friend's house, and I I said, "Oh, that's great," and then he went again, and then another time he got invited. I say, "Why don't you go?" And this kid said, "Don't don't you realize that it's porn?" And
Yeah. Yeah.
here I was
Yeah. Yeah.
encouraging him, and I thought, I bet all the other mothers they think it's Japanese cartoons, and sounds totally innocent. I want to point out something, another misconception. And this started when we started seeing the defund the police movement and things. People would show images of police in ever more, geared up, very fully geared up, and say, "Oh, this is so scary. These are such malicious, brutal people." And I'm going, look at what you're looking at. That is all defensive gear.
Yes.
And
Yes.
if they
Yes.
can preserve their lives, they're less likely to inflict unnecessary harm on you because they're less afraid, they're more in
Oh,
control,
well.
and
Yeah.
it's totally misinterpreted. And I had this friend, and was she was describing the movie. Oh, what was it? Hurt Locker, and
Oh yeah. Sure.
she said the movie was about. We were both talking to someone who hadn't seen it. She said it was about a man who was, I guess, in the Iraq War, and he got addicted to killing. And when he would come home, he couldn't, relax. He couldn't let that go. He couldn't relate to his family and normal human emotions. And so he got estranged. I said, he wasn't addicted to killing. He was a bomb.
Undisposable explosive ordnance. So, yep.
He risked his life all the time
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
inflicting any harm on anybody to prevent other people from getting hurt. That's what he was addicted to. Let's give him a little credit. And she
Yes, and we take this, but what a reading on it. One of the things we're just talking about that's worthy of mentioning is the video game rating system. So they conned the Supreme Court to give them the right to play any game at any age, and Congress said do a rating system. We'll do it for you. This actually previously, and I call it many lies for the price of one. And the ratings, instead of just saying 7 and above, it says E. Truly, it's like the fine print E7. What's E mean? Everyone 7 and above. Everyone 8 and above. It's like you actually have to read the fine print. But then they take the most like Grand Theft Auto, and there's a rating called A, adults only. But for all practical purposes, there are no A games. It's rated 18. 17 is an M-rated game. So all of these games, the most violent ones, are M. What's mature? Every kid's mature. I'm
oh,
mature. I want to be
oh yeah.
mature. You said I'm mature. I could play a mature game. Oh, okay. So they take these most violent games, and they give it one of the most desirable terms. They call it mature. They could say 17 and above. They could say adults
Mhm.
only. But they put this label on it that is one of the most desirable things for
Yeah.
children. And then we've got children at the youngest age playing these games at technically 17 and above only. A lot of talk about Fortnite. Fortnite is T, 13 and above only. That people don't know that. You have to spend a few minutes online digging to even find out what it's
Uh-huh.
rated. And we've got tens of millions of kids out there playing that game every night, with parents having no idea that the people who made it say you should be at least 13 to play it. And by the way, their standard is hopefully lower than our personal standard for our children should be. The rating system is another one of the pathological things that this industry has inflicted upon us.
Well, and you you make a great analogy. It is so important to grasp. When people say they express this sense of helplessness against all this, you analogize to the tobacco industry and how at first we didn't realize the harms of tobacco. We didn't limit it from children even. And gradually we came to accept that we had to take action to protect kids. And
Yeah.
some activity that is, you know, open to adults should be forbidden to children. And we have
Yes.
been able to make great strides in limiting tobacco use among kids. And um, it can be done, but like you say, the rating system has to have some teeth in it. And what are some other things we can do to fight against this?
I'm this huge science geek. My favorite website, ScienceDaily.com. Check it every day, every category. And there have been this wonderful study that looking at millions of Twitter entries, and then looking for happy words like joyful, happy, fun. And what they found out was going to the park, going outside,
Mhm.
was one of the most joyful things anybody could do. That there was so much, all of these words, happy, joyful, exciting. They're looking for all these words. The only thing they could compare it to was Christmas.
Hmm.
The only other thing that people talk about with the same degree of pleasure and happiness as Christmas is getting out in the park. So, it's a pretty simple dynamic. Take your kids, get out in the park, Play frisbee golf, have a picnic, play in the playground. Our little town here has the most amazing playground. People come from miles around to come and play in the little playground there. Yet, there's so many things that we can be doing with our children when we talk about that. But the other thing becomes this sleep management. And we've got to understand that it should have been taught in elementary school, basic sleep hygiene. Our bodies are designed to sleep in darkness. Throughout human history, it was dark, dark, dark. Just the glowing embers of a fire was all there would be. What I tell all my audiences that, you may not get one more minute of sleep, but you wear a sleep mask. There's a sleep mask on Amazon with 85,000 reviews for a sleep mask. That's how people feel about that thing. I recommend a mask to everybody. If you don't like that one, try another. My grandson went to college. Now, what's most likely to kill my grandson? Suicide, traffic deaths, and opiate overdoses. What's the greatest gift I got my grandson? A good night's
Mm,
sleep. He's seen my class. He's heard my class. He heads off to college, and I give him several different kinds of sleep masks. I said, find the one you like and use it.
mm.
I called my grandson up and called, hey, buddy, how you doing? I'm doing great, Grandpa. Are you getting enough sleep? Yes, sir. Are you in your sleep mask? Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, it got kind of grody. I went online and ordered
Oh,
another one. So,
good.
so these are things we can do
Yes.
to get enough sleep and to let it be quality sleep. We're designed to sleep in darkness. Another pathology is these mega doses of caffeine that we're putting in our
Mm,
bodies. We got to shut off caffeine shortly after lunch.
mhm.
That the half life of caffeine in your body is 5 hours. That means your caffeine took at dinner at 5 p.m. is still a half strength when it's bed at 10 p.m. And to stop you from deep cycle sleep. And that's where the Alzheimer's and the chronic pain comes from, is this lack of deep cycle
Yeah,
sleep. So there's so many pathologies, but just quality sleep, just sleep, make it as dark as possible, teach your children to sleep in the
mm.
dark, or teach them to sleep with a sleep mask, and cut off caffeine shortly after
But
lunch,
yeah,
and we're already halfway home.
and these video games and the devices are light sources, and they are stimulating our eyes and our brains in a way that's very unnatural, and so this prolonged exposure to these screens, I think physiologically, has
Yes.
a detrimental effect. And anybody that wants to learn more about sleep, we had a great, I think it was 2 episodes with Dr. Gozal, a sleep expert, and
Oh,
about
well done.
sleep in the various stages
Yeah.
of life, and I'm with you on that. Well, I wanted to share something that, um, I said I was able to talk to a group of North African teenagers in Morocco, and, they said, "You have, 15 minutes, you can tell these kids whatever you want. You can speak very freely." And, they were kids who are studying English, and I said, "I hear you're studying English. That's very, very good. English is the language of freedom,
Oh, that's so.
but there's a word in English you have to know, and it's the word no. And we in America have to use that all the time because we're constantly bombarded with terrible, terrible things online and around us. And you have to keep your values and your wholesome families by saying
So,
no to
yes.
much more than you say yes to. And certainly
Amen.
that includes video games. Well, I wanted to conclude by noting and appreciating that you talk about um, people being of three types: sheep, wolves, or sheepdogs, and cultivating that sheepdog mentality. Can you share a couple of ideas for training kids to have a sheepdog mentality rather than a sheep or a wolf mentality?
Well, I have actually a book called Sheepdogs. It's a children's book. It's got a lot of great reviews on Amazon, and it talks about, it lets kids understand that the bully is a wolf. The bully is hurting people, and the sheep are being hurt. But the sheepdog is the one who stands up to the bully. And when they're young, the little sheepdog thinks there might be something wrong with them, that they might be a wolf, but they're not. They're like the ugly duckling who grows up to be a beautiful swan. The little sheepdog who's motivated to protect the people around them, they are something beautiful and strong in our civilization. And when we wrap up the book, we talk about the wolf or coward will use the lambs as human shields, but the sheepdog is a human shield for the lambs.
Mm.
And we talk about how the sheep will die to protect the ones they love. Only the sheepdog loves enough to die for other people's loved
Mhm.
ones. But that don't make them heroes. They're heroes because they walk out the door every day prepared to lay down their life. And a line that's going on my tombstone, it says, sometimes the greatest love is not to sacrifice your life, but to live a life of sacrifice. And we wrap up the book by saying, now, in nature, wolves are not really bad, and they're an important part of nature, and dogs can't always save the day, and sheep aren't necessarily helpless, but people are different. They're born that way, and that's all they're going to be. You can be whatever you want to be. Have you got what it takes to be a sheepdog? And it's funny, at the end of that, we got the original Sheep, the Wolf, and Sheepdog essay. I've had a lot of people ask, how did that become so viral? Why did that take off? It's straight out of my book.
Mhm.
And we're just a society that loves dogs. We really do. And it's a good thing. I think it represents something good about our society. So the idea of being a sheepdog is a pretty positive thing, and we can encourage people to come a few steps up there. And you talk about using the word no. The sheepdog is one that stands up and says no.
Mhm.
That protect your children from these things. I had a lady send me an email. She said, I've got four sons, two of them in the military, one's in the combat zone right now, but I'm not a sheepdog. What am I? So you give birth to sheepdogs, you're a sheepdog. Not everybody's in the front lines.
Yes.
You're a sheepdog identifying, Leah, you're identifying the sheepdogs who become wolves, who need to be reined in. That's a virtuous, you're a sheepdog protecting us from the sheepdogs who have become
Mm.
wolves and holding them accountable. And that's a beautiful thing. You're a sheepdog running this podcast and giving people deeper levels of knowledge. You're a sheepdog standing up and telling those children in Morocco the most important word is no. And so that's the sheepdog, or just all the ones who are striving to move the flock towards safety. All the ones who know the wolf is out there and trying to move that flock towards safety.
Mm.
So God bless all the sheepdogs out there because we need them, and you're a living manifestation of how it can be.
Mm.
If I may take a note, one of my more recent books is on spiritual combat,
Mhm.
and you talk about the faith side of the house. And when I talk to first responders and military, I tell them this is not about religion. It's an existential question that everybody asks. You see terrible, terrible things every day. And you got to ask, how could a loving God allow these things to happen? And you think you know about faith from TV and movies. And I think if you just think for a minute, you realize that's a pretty twisted representation. So most of our faiths would agree that we're not God's puppets. And a loving father would not stand over our shoulder every step of the way, manipulating everything. He lets us make our own decisions. You've heard if you love something, let it go. If it comes back, it's yours. Maybe that's how much God loves us, and most faiths would kind of agree on that. And He lets us make our own decisions. A lot of people make bad decisions, and that means a lot of bad things happen. You say, God, why don't you do something? He said, I did. I sent you. And if you got a remote idea, there might be a life after this life, then it's really pretty important. It's a pretty big deal. And in the end, no matter how hard you pray, we're going to die. That prayer's not going to get answered. Everybody's going to die. Every nation falls over my dead body. We'll fight for what's right. In the end, our son will die, but eternity continues. When I tell people, don't let the things of this world pull you down. Keep your eye on the big picture. Do the best job you can. Be the sheepdog. Be God's faithful sheepdog. And just trying to protect the flock. And it's all I can do to just strive to be God's dog. I just want to be God's faithful dog. And one day the sheepdog will rest at the feet of the great shepherd. Maybe we'll hear those words, well done, the good and faithful servant.
Well, that's a beautiful place to let this rest, and we'll land there. I thank you very much for talking with us today, Dave, and wish you well on your way as you continue to train and be a sheepdog to many others, and appreciate your time.
And I appreciate you. Never doubt that you are the sheepdog and you are guiding us towards safety. And all you people listening out there, God bless you and have faith and strive to make that world a better place. Remember that word, no. Stay safe.
Thanks a lot. Subscribe and review Conversation Balloons on your favorite podcast platform. Find me at leahfarish.com and on Instagram at LeahFarish.